Good morning. I'm talking about helicopter parenting today. Helicopter parenting. My name is Valerie Ling. I'm a clinical psychologist, the director founder for the Center for Effective Living. In today's live segment, I'm going to try to suggest that we can move from being helicopter parents to being motherships and then eventually to space stations, right? I'm going to attempt to make this work because I've been toying with this in my own head. I am a mum myself, and I don't know about you, but I'm finding that in this social media environment, you may be easily start to feel like you're a neglecting parent if you don't get caught up in some of the advice or suggestions or concerns that are really part of helicopter parenting. So what do I mean by helicopter parenting? I'm sure you've actually heard it thrown about quite a bit. Apparently, helicopter parenting is the sort of parenting that pays extremely close attention to your child's experiences and problems. It's a kind of parenting where you're hovering or looking just, casting yourself into the horizon to see what's going to be a challenge for your child and then coming into your child's world to problem solve. So that's helicopter parenting. I was actually curious, where did this term come from? Where did the term helicopter parenting come from? And apparently, so Mr. Google tells me that helicopter parenting came about in the 1990s when American college administrators were starting to observe that parents were spending more and more time in the college environment trying to problem solve and figure out and advocate for their college-aged students. They were becoming increasingly present in the administration offices, trying to figure out why their child couldn't get into that class or why this accommodation wasn't working, and insisting on speaking to management and lecturers and advocating for their children. Hi, if you've joined me, I'm talking about helicopter parenting, and if you feel free to comment or like as you please. So I disclosed that I'm a parent myself. It's no surprise. I talk about parenting quite a bit. And this week I noticed that my helicopter parenting radar was starting to go up because I was starting to see posts on social media that was asking for direct input from teachers or, kind of making complaints against the school where my kids are at. And I thought, okay, what's the big deal here? What's going on with helicopter parenting? Why are we doing this? And not to be judgmental, I think we need to understand where the dynamic comes from, and more importantly, what it leaves with our kids, right? So helicopter parenting, I think, comes from a good place. I think that as parents, we want to make sure that we're not neglecting our children. Now, if you think about this from a generational perspective, and if you think about parenting styles before this generation, boomers, and then before that, builders, if you're interested in generational work, it's the kind of parenting where you were possibly as a child left to your own devices, and maybe that did not have very good outcomes for you. Maybe there was stuff that was going on in the school or stuff going on in the playground, things going on in your world as a child that your parents were not aware of. And so we've become acutely sensitive to not wanting to do that with our kids. We don't want to be absent for the award ceremonies, and more importantly, we don't want to be absent or not in the loop about some of the difficulties our children might be experiencing. And so we become heavily invested in a form of helicopter parenting where we want to make sure that we're intimately involved in all of the details of our children's world. Now, while I was preparing to come online, I just thought that I would hop online and get in touch with some of the generational research that is coming out in parenting. And apparently, helicopter parenting is being replaced with a new kind of parenting. It is called, where is it? I've got it here. Stealth fighter parenting. Helicopter parenting is being replaced by stealth fighter parenting. What is that? Let me just give you the definition of stealth fighter parenting. Today, behold the era of stealth fighter parenting. Stealth fighter parents do not hover. They choose when and where they will attack. If the issue seems below their threshold of importance, they save their energy and let it go entirely. But if it crosses their threshold and shows up on their radar, they will strike rapidly, in force, and often with no warning. Watch out. When these stealth fighter parents are fully roused, they can be even more attached, even more protective, and even more interventionist than helicopter parents. As web junkies, they will monitor the school sites, the social media sites nightly, send emails to school board members, trade advice on blogs, and look up teacher credentials. Often they have a lot of flexible work time, and so they will juggle their schedules to monitor their kids' activities in person. Because they are speedy multitaskers, they will quickly switch their kids into or take them out of any situation according to their assessment of their youngsters' interests. Parental involvement in our schools has become an extreme sport. I'll post that link up there for where I'm reading from. So, stealth fighter parenting. On a serious note, anxiety in children is on the rise. I'll post another article to highlight that. We are actually finding more and more that children and adolescents are not coping with the regular pressures of just being a regular kid. Part of this has got to do with helicopter parenting, intrusive parenting. If you think about it, is a helicopter a very quiet thing? No. Can you just ignore it? Thanks, Maggie. Can you just ignore a helicopter? No, they hover. They're actually really close. They make a lot of wind and movement with their, what are those things called? Blades. They can't be propellers, surely. And they zip in and they zip out, and they are on your mind. If you are a person on the ground with a helicopter hovering around you, it is very difficult to get that out of your space, out of your mental space. Not only that, you're kind of also watchful of your environment. If you've got a helicopter hovering around you, this happens on social media as well. Don't you see those posts? Hey, everybody, there's a helicopter. No worries, Maggie. There's a helicopter. What's happening? Something's happening. When you see a helicopter, you kind of go into high alert as well. Something must be wrong. And that's what happens with kids. When we have parents, when we are parents that are helicoptering and in their space and in their environment, we're basically communicating to them, hey, kiddo, this could potentially be big trouble for you, big trouble. You may not be able to handle this, so I need to be able to stay close. Disclaimer, this does not relate to situations where children are in need of parental help. We've been talking about bullying this past week. This does not come into it. I'm talking really about everyday situations that when we have brought up our children and that they're of a certain age, that they can actually handle. Yes, it may not be a fair situation in the classroom. Yes, their teacher might have given them a detention by mistake. Or yes, they're going to turn up to school with the wrong uniform. But all things considered, if we helicopter them, they're actually going to feel like they don't have the ability to figure that out. Why? Because who's their number one fan? You and me, their parents. We're their number one fan. And if their number one fan continues to communicate to them, I need to stay close because I don't know if you've got what it takes. Or this environment is too scary for you, this environment is bigger than you, then they're going to believe that. They're going to believe that they're not ready. They're going to believe that if they fall down, they're not going to be able to get up. They're going to believe that if they need help, their voice isn't big enough to manage their environment and ask for help. So yes, helicopter parenting does have links, therefore, in causing some anxiety in kids. So what I want to argue instead is that why not try moving to mothership parenting? That's not to exclude the dads. Apparently ships have a female identity. Okay, so mothership parenting. Now this is going to show my like for science fiction, and sometimes when I go into this phase, people say you've just lost me, but I'm going to try. The mothership. When you think of a mothership, what is the role of a mothership? It houses, it carries, it sends to a particular location, it deploys. And then the little ships or spaceships or shuttles go zip, 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 zip in their environment, perfectly capable to take care of what they need to take care of, right? And the mothership, by and large, stays close, but is stationary. Motherships aren't supposed to move quickly and hover around the little ships, because basically if they did that, I guess they would kind of ping and crash into the little ships who are doing their stuff in their world. Right, digress. Back to the point. Motherships stay stationary, right? And they represent to the little ships and the little shuttles a haven, a point of safety, a point of return. If they're in trouble and they need help, zip, they're back into the mothership. They get refueling, they get repairs, they get input, but then out they go, back again they go. Now psychologically, this is actually a really important concept. Parents eventually become a kind of a safety template for their children, where the parents do not need to be in the environment that the child is in, but psychologically the child has an assurance that my mum and dad, they got my back. I'm going into this environment, I'm going into this world with my skills, with my voice, with my confidence, and if it doesn't work out, that's okay. I'll return to the mothership and they'll tank me up with encouragement, with cuddles, with problem solving, with belief, and then I'll zip back out again, right? So there comes a point in time, especially when kids are in school, where we become the mothership. We just sit back, but always making sure that the kids know that if they need us, we'll be there. But we do not monitor, we do not hover. They come back and they tell us what's been happening, and they tell us what they need from us. Now, eventually, the older they get, probably in high school, adult years, stay with me on this one, you eventually become a space station. All right, what is a space station? A space station basically does not follow the ships into their exploration, right? A space station is pretty much plonked, grounded somewhere, where the ships come back for research, for input, and they share what they found on the outside as they've been exploring. But basically, it is no longer a ship that moves with the other little ships. So as a parent, eventually you become a consultant, an encourager, and a cheerleader, and you are stationary, right? You don't move, you don't go for your first interview with your child. I have heard stories where that has happened. You don't write emails to their boss demanding that your adult child gets the leave or the pay that they deserve. Also have come across stories like that. No, you are far removed from the actual situation and you wait for your children, your adult children, to come back to share, and you encourage with them. And if they ask, you input into their life, into their world with your experience, always maintaining a degree of curiosity. And I think that's why I like, for myself anyway, this idea of you're a space station, because you're curious. Your adult children aren't going to an environment where you've been before. It's a new world, but you don't have to be anxious about it. You can be curious about it. You can actually be interested in their world, always providing them with that template that you've got their back, you believe them, and then you can say, you've got this, you've got this. So that's my little thing on helicopter parenting, and apparently now the new thing called stealth fighter parenting, and my suggestion that we can actually be moved from that to being a mothership and eventually into a stationary space station. Have a great day.